Good fight. Now I'm a little motivated.
If you want to get more closely acquainted with Vergil's Doppelganger mechanic, I strongly encourage you to watch my first video, which is basically this Doppelganger guide, where I go very in-depth into the basics, the rudimentary aspects of this mechanic. The link to that video will be in the description below, so yeah. So first things first, before I start talking about the combo and the mistakes you can make and all that jazz, I should preface this by talking about my controls. So, I play this game using my mouse and keyboard. Yeah, really. Blasphemy, I know. But I think that if you've ever played a single game on your PC using a mouse and a keyboard, these controls should be familiar to you. I think they're very easy to grasp. So, just like with almost every game ever, WASD are the keys you use for movement. So, W is forward, S is backwards, A is left, D is right. This is the equivalent to you using your analog stick for moving, like tilting it left, right, forward, backward. That's basically what I use. So, again, W, forward, S, backward, A, left, D, right. Obviously, just like in every game ever, space is jump. So I jump using space. The left mouse button, unsurprisingly, is the attack button. Also, like in every game ever. The right mouse button is the button I use for Mirage Blades. So all my Mirage Blade attacks are mapped to the right button. The right mouse button, I mean. So that's basically it for these basic controls. Shift is the button I use for locking on. So when I lock on, I press Shift. In this game, you gotta be locked on for just about any attack ever. Only under specific circumstances should you release the lock on. But yeah, basically lock on is Shift in my case. So next up we've got the trick action. So, trick up, down, air trick, all that stuff. I use E. So E is the button I use. So if I press E without locking on, that is trick up. If I press E while locking on, like Shift plus E, that is air trick, and I teleport. If I press back to forward plus E, or S plus W plus E, that is trick down. So, like I said, E is the trick action. That's the button I use for tricking, basically. R is the button I use for taunting. So that's the taunt button. Air taunts, lock-on taunts, doesn't matter. R is the button you gotta press for taunting. Moving on, I have F, and F is the button I use to charge my Sindel trigger. So I press and hold F, then I release it, and I basically go into my Sindel trigger mode. Moving on, we also have 1 and 2. So 1 is the button for changing the weapon to the right. So my layout is as follows. I use the default layout for my weapons, my arsenal. So it goes Yamato, Beowulf, Mirage Edge. So if I have the Yamato equipped and I press 1, it will switch to Beowulf, which is the weapon to its right. And if I press 1 again, it will switch from Beowulf to the Mirage Edge, which is the weapon to its right. If I have the Yamato equipped, and I press 2, it will go to the weapon that's on its left, and that is the Mirage Edge. If I press 2 again, it will switch to Beowulf. If I press 2 again, it will once again switch to the Yamato. So that's how this works. We're switching weapons left and right. That's how it works. Moving on, we have the Doppelganger buttons. So the buttons are as follows. X is the slow doppelganger. This is a doppelganger that is kind of delayed by about, I don't know, half a second or something. So that's X. C is the normal doppelganger. He is slightly delayed, not by half a second, but like he's just not completely in sync with you. So that's C. And V is the haste version of the doppelganger who is completely in sync with you, meaning that he immediately reacts to your commands and he mimics your inputs. He registers them immediately and simply reacts to them. So, yeah. I deactivate the doppelganger by pressing Z. So that's how I do it. And, you know, that's pretty much that. Those are all the controls, really. There are some other things like, you know, using CTRL to basically lock onto multiple targets, or, I mean, switch the lock on, stuff like that, or using the arrows, using, you know, it just doesn't matter, really. These are the main things that you will need. So, if I say, I'm pressing D plus left mouse button, that means that I'm pressing right plus attack button. If I say I'm pressing S plus W plus left mouse button, that means I'm pressing back to forward plus attack button. Kind of like tilting your analog stick back and then forward and then pressing the attack button. So that's how it works. If I say back to forward plus right mouse button, or S plus W plus right mouse button, that is basically back to forward plus your Mirage Blade button. So heavy rain blades in my case. But don't worry, most of the time, like 99% of the time, I'll say right plus attack button instead of D plus left mouse button, because I feel like that's more universally comprehensible, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, these are my controls, and now let's talk about the actual combo. Alright, so now we got the Ruin combo, and this combo's pretty interesting in that it's technically, I want to say it's like completely improvised, but it's not. It's a mixture between Maker T's Vergil Combo 5, to an extent. It's only got a couple of bits, but, you know, you can see that the essence is there, but it's not the entire combo. So it's a mixture between that combo and Bibsy's combo, this one. So that's like the second half. And what's interesting about this combo is that it didn't take a lot of tries at all, because it literally is just a string of 4 or 5 setups from previous combos that I've already done. And I guess that's why it didn't really take me a long time, because I was so familiar with the setups that, you know, I was so used to it, I was so accustomed to them that it didn't really take me a long time to, you know, get this combo down. So, let's get into it. So you start this combo off by summoning the slow version of the doppelganger, you know, the one that's delayed. And this setup is just the most common setup. It's appeared in I think 4 or 5 combos. And this setup in particular is identical to the setup from the pig combo that I'll come back to. But for now, so you summon the slow version of the doppelganger, and you use Rising Star, or well, you press D and you hold the left mouse button, or well, you press right on your analog stick and you hold the attack button. Now, because, you know, when you do this, Vergil will do Rising Star, but since this doppelganger is delayed, even though he's mimicking your commands, even though you are holding the attack button, Vergil's doppelganger does Rapid Slash instead of Rising Star, because you can only do Rising Star if you make contact with the enemy, and since the enemy is airborne, the doppelganger can't make contact with them, so they end up doing Rapid Slash instead. Alright, so basically right plus attack button is Rapid Slash, but right plus holding the attack button is Rising Star. So let's say you have the slow version of the doppelganger active. If you were to press right plus attack button, what would happen is Vergil will do Rapid Slash. The doppelganger would also do Rapid Slash, but since he's delayed, he would do it half a second later, but he would still mimic your commands. But let's say you pressed right and you held the attack button. What would happen is Vergil would do Rising Star, but the doppelganger would react to your commands. He would react to you pressing right plus holding the attack button, but he would do it half a second later because he's delayed. But by that time, it will have been too late because the enemy will have already been in the air. And this is really important because you can't do Rising Star unless you're making contact with the enemy. So if you press right and you hold the attack button, that's Rising Star. But if the enemy is airborne, it doesn't matter if you're holding the attack button, you will simply go right under them and you will do rapid slash, because Rising Star only activates upon contact with the enemy. And in this case, Vergil's Doppelganger is reacting to you pressing right and holding the attack button. But the reason he's doing rapid slash is because the enemy is in the air, Vergil launched them into the air with Rising Star, and they have no choice but to use rapid slash because they can't make contact with the enemy. So that's basically how this works. If we were using the haste version of the Doppelganger, the Doppelganger who was completely in sync with you, and if we had that guy active and we pressed right and held the attack button, well, in that case, both Vergil and the Doppelganger would basically use Rising Star in tandem, because there's no delay. But since we're using the slow Doppelganger, he is delayed by like half a second, so yeah. So now that you're done using Rising Star, or rather, as soon as the Doppelganger has finished using Rapid Slash, like here, you change his mode from slow to haste by pressing V. So essentially that's what you gotta do. You gotta change his mode, and so that, it's gonna be necessary because you want him to react immediately to what you're about to do. So yeah. And this is the reason why you had to change the Doppelganger's mode from slow to haste, because you want him to react to your commands immediately, right? Void Slash already has it kind of has a slow startup, so if you hadn't changed the mode, he would have taken a long time to do Void Slash, and the enemy would have fallen to the ground, and that would have killed the whole purpose. So yeah. You use you use Aerial Rave 2, except for the last hit. And after using Aerial Rave 2, like this roulette spin, after that, you press, and this is very important, you press D plus A plus left mouse button, or right plus left plus attack button. So you press right, left, attack button. And the reason for this is, so when you're on the left side and you're in midair and you have the Yamato equipped, pressing left plus attack button will result in you using aerial cleave. But when you're on the right side, on the ground, pressing left plus attack button is rapid slash. So again, left plus attack button in midair on the left side, aerial cleave. Left plus attack button on the right side, on the ground, rapid slash. So that's really important. So if you were to press left plus attack button, left plus attack button, Vergil would end up doing aerial cleave, but his Doppelganger would end up using rapid slash, because the Doppelganger is on the ground on the right side, and pressing left plus attack button is rapid slash. And since the Doppelganger copies your commands, your inputs, he would just, react to what you're pressing, and left plus attack button is simply rapid slash when you're on that side. But you don't want that. You want the Doppelganger to use void slash. And since the Doppelganger, like we said, is on the right side, on the ground, using Void Slash is right plus left plus attack button, or D plus A plus left mouse button, right? So how do you solve this? Well, it's very simple. While using aerial cleave with Vergil, you don't press left plus attack button. You don't press A plus left mouse button. Instead, you press right plus left plus attack button, or D plus A plus left mouse button. This will still cause Vergil to use aerial cleave, but his Doppelganger will end up using Void Slash instead of Rapid Slash, because Void Slash, like I said, on the right side, on the ground, is right plus left plus attack button. If you only press left plus attack button, the Doppelganger will end up using Rapid Slash. But if you press right plus left plus attack button, he will use Void Slash. It's very, very simple. So as soon as you basically are done using aerial cleave, you can see that the Doppelganger immediately catches the enemy with Void Slash and prevents them from falling to the ground. And this is the exact same setup. It's literally identical to this segment here, this sequence from the Pit combo. It's like quite literally identical. So after doing this, you essentially use Trig Down, and after you're done using Trig Down, you press V to call your Doppelganger back to your position, right? So now you basically use Rising Star. So now you and the Doppelganger both use Rising Star, and now that you're done using, now that you're done using Rising Star, I changed the camera here for a better angle. Okay, so now you switch to Beowulf, and you use Starfall. So Starfall is just pressing the attack button, or well, the left mouse button once. Now, Aerial Raid 2 is basically you press the attack button twice in a row, like you press the attack button twice, then you make a small pause, and then you just continue mashing the attack button. So that's basically Aerial Raid 2. Aerial Rave 1 is pressing the attack button 3 times in a row without any pause, so you just smash like a maniac. So you want to do Aerial Rave 2, not 1. So you're going to press the attack button twice, and then you're going to make a small pause after that second hit. If you don't make that pause, and if you press the attack button more than twice in a row, the Doppelganger will end up doing Aerial Rave 1. If you press the attack button once, the Doppelganger will only use 1 slash of Aerial Rave. If you press it thrice, like 3 times, then the Doppelganger will use Aerial Rave 1. But if you press it twice in a row while using Starfall, and then you make a pause, a small pause, and then you continue to mash, that's when the Doppelganger will end up using Aerial Rave 2. So Starfall is just pressing the attack button, or well, the left mouse button once, but since you want the Doppelganger to do the first 2 hits of Aerial Rave 2, you gotta press the attack button twice, so that he could do 2 slashes, obviously. And after doing these 2 slashes, you make a slight pause, and now that you're on the ground, you switch to the Yamato, and you use Yamato Combo C. It's very important to make this pause, because if you don't, if you keep mashing the attack button immediately, if you mash it more than twice in a row, like 3 times in a row, the Doppelganger will end up doing Aerial Rave 1, which is not what you want. You want him to do Aerial Rave 2, and Aerial Rave 2 is essentially you press the attack button twice, then you make a slight pause, and then you keep mashing the attack button like a maniac. And Vergil will do this roulette spin, and then he will pin the enemy to the ground with the last hit of Aerial Rave 2. Another thing that is incredibly worth noting is that Yamato Combo C is basically you press the attack button 4 times in a row, sometimes 5, but it doesn't really matter, because as long as you do the first 4 slashes with the Yamato, that's all that matters. So you do the first 4 slashes with the Yamato, or basically you press the attack button 4 or 5 times, then you make a slight pause, and then you continue to mash like a maniac up until the end. That is basically really important, because if you don't make a pause after the 4th hit with the Yamato, what's going to happen is you're going to use Yamato Combo A. As you can see here, I was mashing like a maniac, I didn't make a single pause, and what happened was I did Yamato Combo A, because Yamato Combo A is basically you just pressing the attack button more than 5 times in a row while on the ground. That's all. So you just keep mashing. But Yamato Combo C is you mash the attack button 4 times or 5 times, and then you basically make the small pause, and then you continue to mash. And that's really important. So again, you use Starfall, and while using Starfall, you basically press the attack button twice. So you press the attack button twice, you make a slight pause, you switch to the Yamato, and you use Yamato Combo C. So you just mash like a maniac 4 times, approximately, something like that, 4 times, because, you want to do the first 4 hits of Yamato Combo C, and then you make a slight pause, and then you continue to mash like a maniac. Because Yamato Combo C is pressing the attack button 4 times in a row, then making a slight pause, and then continuing to mash until you get this barrage of slashes. And that's essentially when you catch the enemy, and you hit them with this slash barrage, and you also simultaneously deactivate the Doppelganger. And there's another mistake you can make here. So remember how I said that when you use Starfall, you press the attack button twice so that Vergil's Doppelganger can do the first 2 hits of Aerial Raid 2, and then you make a slight pause, and then you continue to mash. If you don't make this pause, if you mash the attack button like more than twice in a row, like 3 or 4 times in a row, the Doppelganger will end up doing Aerial Raid 1. And similarly, Vergil can end up doing Yamato Combo A if you just keep mashing the attack button like a maniac without making any pause. As you can see here, I made this pause, everything was fine, the Doppelganger ended up doing, Yamato Aerial Raid 2, but as you can see, I didn't make the pause after the 4th hit with the Yamato, and what happened was Vergil ended up using Yamato Combo A instead of Combo C, because Yamato Combo A is mashing the attack button more than 5 times in a row without making any break, like 6, 7, 8 times. Now, just so you know, Yamato Combo A has 5 hits with the Yamato. But that doesn't mean you have to mash 5 times. For example, here, I mashed like 8 or 9 times. And similarly, with Yamato Combo C, you have 4 hits with the Yamato, then you make a pause, and then you just continue to mash like a maniac. But here's the thing, you don't have to mash the attack button 4 times strictly to do these 4 hits. You can mash it like 5 times, it doesn't matter. So long as you make a pause after the 4th hit with the Yamato. For example, look at this. I did Yamato Combo C here, but if you look closely, the way I'm mashing the attack button, I didn't mash the attack button 4 times in a row to do the first 4 hits of this combo. No, I mashed the attack button 8 times in a row before making the pause. So the most important thing is not how many times you mash, but just make sure that you know that you're done with the 4th hit of this combo, and then you make a pause. So that's really important. If you don't make these pauses, what can happen is the Doppelganger might end up using Aerial Raid 1 instead of 2, and Vergil might end up using Yamato Combo A instead of C. So yeah. Oh, and don't forget to deactivate the Doppelganger by pressing Z as soon as he is done using Aerial Raid 2, as soon as he pins the enemy to the ground. So now you deactivate the Doppelganger, like I said, and you use Rising Star. After using Rising Star, you use Aerial Cleave. And once you use Aerial Cleave, the enemy will basically bounce back into the air, because that's how Aerial Cleave works. And now you're supposed to wait a little. You're supposed to wait a little after using Aerial Cleave and summon the haste version of the Doppelganger again. So it's very important that you basically wait a little. Don't summon the Doppelganger immediately after hitting the ground with Aerial Cleave. Wait for the enemy to lose a little bit of altitude, and then summon the haste version of the Doppelganger. I'll explain why this is so important a little later. But now that you've summoned the haste version of the Doppelganger, basically summoning him will cause the enemy to get bounced back into the air again. As soon as you do this, you immediately use Trig Down to gain some distance, you switch to Beowulf, and you use Kick 13, which is back to forward plus attack button, or S plus W plus left mouse button in my case. So you press back plus forward plus attack button, and you hold the attack button. I'll explain why very soon. Now, this will cause Vergil to use Kick 13, but the Doppelganger, who can only use the Yamato, will use Void Slash. And the reason for this is, well, back to forward plus attack button with Beowulf is Kick 13, but back to forward plus attack button with the Yamato is Void Slash, and since the Doppelganger can only use the Yamato and he copies your commands, he will end up using Void Slash. So that's basically how it works. He can't use Beowulf. And here's the thing, you don't have to press back to forward plus attack button. You gotta press back to forward and you gotta hold the attack button, because Kick 13 has 2 versions. The first one is back to forward plus attack button. Vergil does this Kick Barrage. But if you press back to forward and you hold the attack button, well, he will do these 2 additional hits that will launch him into the air. So that's what you gotta do. Alright, so remember how I told you how basically after using Aerial Cleave, you're supposed to wait a little before summoning the Doppelganger. Yeah, well, this is of paramount importance, and here's why. So, if you summon the Doppelganger immediately after hitting the ground with Aerial Cleave, what's going to happen is, once you use Trig down and you press back to forward plus attack button, the Doppelganger will use Void Slash, but the enemy won't be caught by it. It'll be too early, as you can see here. And the reason for that is, you didn't wait for the enemy to lose enough altitude. You're supposed to wait for the enemy to lose a little bit of altitude, and then summon the Doppelganger, so that, because, you know, when you summon the Doppelganger, the enemy will get bounced back into the air again. So, this happened a billion times, as you can see here, basically. I summoned the Doppelganger too early. You're supposed to wait a little. If need be, wait for the enemy to hit the ground altogether. But just make sure that you wait a little, and then when you use Trig down, you use back to forward plus attack button, and this will guarantee that the enemy will be caught by Void Slash. But if you don't, they won't be caught. They'll fall to the ground, and this will render this whole move useless. Now that you're in the air, you switch to the Mirage Edge, and you use Air Stinger. But you press right, and you hold the attack button. And now when your Mirage Edge glows, you release the attack button so you can do Round Trip. After this, you switch to Beowulf, and you use Starfall. And now you use Hell on Earth. And that's basically it. Alright, so let me explain. So Vergil is on the left side, and his Doppelganger is also on the left side. There are two major differences and two things we gotta factor in. Vergil is in midair, he's on the left, and he has the Mirage Edge equipped. His Doppelganger is also on the left, but he is on the ground, and he has the Yamato equipped, because as we already know, the Doppelganger can only use the Yamato. He can't use Beowulf or the Mirage Edge. So, if we press D plus left mouse button in midair with Vergil, with the Mirage Edge equipped, right plus attack button, that is Air Stinger. So right plus attack button in midair with the Mirage Edge is Air Stinger. But Vergil's Doppelganger, who is on the ground and has the Yamato, will copy that input. He will copy right plus attack button, or D plus left mouse button, but since he has the Yamato, he will use Rapid Slash, because right plus attack button with the Yamato on the ground is basically Rapid Slash. But with the Mirage Edge in midair, it's Air Stinger. But that's not what we want. We want his Doppelganger to use Rising Star and not Rapid Slash. And as we already know, Rapid Slash is right plus attack button, or D plus left mouse button. But Rising Star is right plus holding the attack button, or holding the left mouse button, basically. So what we want to do is, we have the Mirage Edge equipped, Vergil is in midair, so we press right and we hold the attack button. So we press D and we hold the left mouse button. And now Vergil's Doppelganger, who is on the ground, will mimic those commands, and he will do Rising Star with the Yamato. But it's not enough to hold the attack button, you gotta hold it until the Mirage Edge starts glowing. And then you release the attack button, and Vergil will release Round Trip. So that's what you gotta do. Because Round Trip is activated by holding the attack button for for more than 2 seconds, basically. Like here you can see how I basically, I pressed right and I held the attack button, and I did Air Stinger, and Vergil's Doppelganger did Rising Star, but I released the attack button as soon as Vergil's Doppelganger was done using Rising Star. And because of this, I couldn't release Round Trip. So to do Rising Star, you need to hold the attack button for like half a second. But to do Round Trip, you need to hold it for like a second and a half. So what happened here essentially was I held the attack button for a little while just so that Vergil's Doppelganger could do Rising Star, but I released the attack button immediately after, before the Mirage Edge could start glowing. You're supposed to wait for the Mirage Edge to start glowing, and then you release the attack button so that you could launch Round Trip. And then you switch to Beowulf, you use Starfall, and then you immediately use Hell on Earth. This will automatically deactivate the Doppelganger, and the enemy will basically be, trapped on the Round Trip. It'll keep slicing them up, and you will be able to basically use Hell on Earth and catch the enemy before they fall to the ground, because the Mirage Edge that's spinning, that's cutting them up, is preventing them from falling to the ground. And that's basically it. I went into my Sindel trigger form in the original combo. You don't have to do this at all, I just thought it looked cooler, so yeah. This is the exact same thing as with the ice combo. It's literally the exact same thing. You can see it right here. Of course, I changed the camera angle here so that I was facing forward, but if I hadn't done that, if I kept facing the enemy, like if I was on the left, I would have had to press A plus D plus left mouse button, or left plus right plus attack button. Because, you know, it all depends on the camera, you know, the camera angle. And this final setup is identical to the Railroad combo. The only difference is I didn't use Dragon Breaker, I only used, you know, Hell on Earth. So, yeah, well, that's essentially it. Every mistake that you can make with this combo, like all the mistakes you can make with this combo, are pretty much identical to the mistakes you can make with the Moist combo, Pit combo, Ice combo, and Railroad combo, but only those segments, only those sequences, you know? So, yeah, essentially, now let's get down to the mistakes. So the first mistake you can make is, and I don't know how to explain this mistake, is, it's like when you use Rising Star, and I mean, when you use Aerial Cleave, for some reason, when the Doppelganger uses Void Slash, the enemy is too high up in the air. Like, Void Slash works, right? Like, the Doppelganger definitely caught the enemy with Void Slash, and the enemy did not fall to the ground. They're caught in the Void Slash. But when you use Trig Down and you try to use Rising Star, you can't, because the enemy is too high up in the air, and you can't make contact with the enemy, so even though you're holding the attack button when pressing right plus attack button, or D plus left mouse button, you go right underneath the enemy, because they're too high up in the air and you can't make contact with them. I don't know why this happens. Sometimes Vergil's Doppelganger, like, it definitely does Void Slash, and it works, but the enemy is somehow too high in the air. Like, they're not low enough, they're not closer to the ground as they should be. So when that happens, you can follow the combo up with, you know, with Rising Star. You end up using Rapid Slash instead. So yeah, that's one thing. So, you know, it just kept happening. The same issue, like you can see it here and here. Sometimes this can happen. This is very rare, by the way. This was somewhat common with the Pit combo, but not with this combo. It maybe happened like twice for this combo. So sometimes the Doppelganger ends up being too far away from the enemy. So when I press right plus left plus attack button while using Aerial Cleave, the Doppelganger does Void Slash, but since he's too far away from the enemy, he doesn't catch the enemy with Void Slash. So that's pretty weird, but like I said, that was very, very rare. Here you can see how I used Yamato Combo B instead of C. It kind of desynced in a way. I don't know why. And here you can see how the enemy fell to the ground as I was doing Combo C with the Yamato. Like, this can happen sometimes. I don't know. Like, I guess if you do it too early or something, I don't really have any explanation for it. Here you can see how I essentially, you know, the Doppelganger ended up doing Aerial Rave 1 instead of Aerial Rave 2 because I was mashing too fast. You really gotta pay attention to the Doppelganger and Vergil, and you need to make that pause. And this is the exact same thing that happened with the Moist combo. I'm essentially just, you know, recapping. It's one of the mistakes you can make. So when you use Aerial Rave 1, you're just mashing. So make sure that when you're using Starfall, you press the attack button or the left mouse button twice, right? And if you do it more than twice, if you keep mashing it, the Doppelganger will end up doing Aerial Rave 1. And that's not what you want. You want Aerial Rave 2, and Aerial Rave 2 requires you to use the first two hits. It's like attack button, pause, attack button. So you got to make that pause after the second hit. And if you just keep mashing 3 times in a row, you know, Vergil's Doppelganger will end up doing Aerial Rave 1. Another thing you can do is, if you don't pay attention to Vergil, you can end up doing Yamato Combo A. instead of combo C. So you got to make sure to make a slight pause after the fourth hit with the Yamato. So not only are you supposed to pay attention to the Doppelganger and make sure that he does Aerial Raid 2, you also got to make sure that Vergil does Yamato combo C and not combo A, because you just got to make sure not to mash. Like, you just keep it slow, keep it steady, and that's it. Here you can see how the Doppelganger ends up using Rapid Slash instead of Void Slash, and now let me explain this. So like I said, if you're on the left and you're in midair, and you press left plus attack button, or A plus left mouse button, that is aerial cleave. But since the Doppelganger is to your right, and he's on the ground, he's not in midair, he copies your input, so if you press left plus attack button, or A plus left mouse button, and he's on the right, he will do Rapid Slash. And this is exactly why you gotta press D plus A plus left mouse button, or right plus left plus attack button, because Vergil will still end up doing aerial cleave regardless, but his Doppelganger will end up doing Void Slash, because if you're on the right, okay, well, picture this is Vergil's Doppelganger right now. He's on the right side, he's on the ground, and if you press left plus attack button, he'll do Rapid Slash. But if you press right plus left plus attack button, he will do Void Slash. So that is essentially it. That's the whole thing. That's the whole shtick. This is why you gotta press that right, that D plus A plus left mouse button. So yeah. Another mistake you can make is, well, obviously you can end up not holding the attack button during kick 13, and that way you won't get launched into the air, so that's one mistake you can make. Another mistake you can make is, like, right here you can see how apparently I didn't input Void Slash early enough after summoning the Doppelganger, so what happened was the enemy already fell to the ground. Like, he did get caught by Void Slash, but it was kind of too late, their feet are already touching the ground, so yeah. Another mistake you can make is, as I've already explained with the railroad combo and like a short while ago, you can if you don't hold the left mouse button or the attack button while using Air Stinger, the Doppelganger will do Rapid Slash instead of Rising Star, because he's on the ground, he's on the left, and if you press right plus attack button, that is Rapid Slash, but if you press and hold the attack button, that is Rising Star. So this is the exact reason why you gotta hold the attack button while using Air Stinger. But you can also make the mistake of not holding the attack button for long enough. So here you can see how I held the left mouse button, I held the attack button while using Air Stinger, and the Doppelganger did end up doing Rising Star, but I didn't release Round Trip, because Round Trip takes a longer time to charge than Rising Star. So that's essentially it. You got to hold the attack button for a long time before releasing it and releasing Round Trip. So yeah, these are some of the mistakes you can make with this combo. And yeah. So I also want to bring up this one other thing that no one really cares about, but I find it kind of interesting. So you might be wondering, is it really necessary to use Aerial Raid 2 after using Rising Star, before Aerial Cleave? And yes it is, and let me explain. So if you were to use Aerial Cleave immediately after using Rising Star, like you input Void Slash, you press right plus left plus attack button immediately after using Rising Star, like you use Aerial Cleave, what's going to happen if you do this is the Doppelganger will not react at all. So why is that? Well, the reason is the Doppelganger will be too busy sheathing his sword, because the Doppelganger has just finished using Rapid Slash and is now sheathing his sword. So when Vergil is sheathing his sword, he doesn't react to any melee commands. As you can see here, I'm pressing S plus W plus left mouse button, or well, back plus forward plus attack button, and I'm trying to use Void Slash while Vergil is sheathing his sword, but it simply doesn't work, and he doesn't react to me, pressing back plus forward plus attack button. He only reacts when he's completely done sheathing his sword. So yeah. So this is exactly what happens with the Doppelganger. So when I use Rising Star, if I choose to use, Aerial Cleave immediately and I press right plus left plus attack button, Vergil's Doppelganger will not react because he will be too busy sheathing his sword. Only after he's done sheathing his sword will he react, and that's exactly why you gotta use Aerial Ray 2 to give the Doppelganger time to sheath his sword. So Aerial Ray 2 basically buys time for the Doppelganger to finish sheathing his sword. Which is why we gotta use Aerial Ray 2 as a filler to compensate, basically, to give the Doppelganger time to sheath his sword, and then we use Aerial Cleave. Because, by that time, the Doppelganger will have already finished sheathing his sword, and he will be ready to react to Void Slash. So, yeah. Also, previously, you remember how I said how sometimes Void Slash won't hit the enemy? Like the Doppelganger will be too far away from the enemy, and Void Slash will not connect. It won't catch the enemy. Yeah, well, I finally figured out why this actually happens, and it's very simple. This happens if you are too close to the enemy before starting the combo. There needs to be a considerable amount of distance, not too much distance, definitely not too much, but a little bit of distance between you and the enemy, because let me explain. Alright, so let's say there's no Doppelganger. Like, you're starting the combo with Rapid Slash, alright? And you're very close to the enemy, like here. Alright, so now you use Rapid Slash, and now you're done sheathing your sword, and you're supposed to use Void Slash. But you're too far away from the enemy, so you can't use Void Slash. You can't catch the enemy. You're too close to the enemy. So Rapid Slash, when you used it, it basically took you too far away from the enemy, so when you use Void Slash, it didn't catch the enemy. The same thing happens here. The Doppelganger, because when you're too close to the enemy and you summon the Doppelganger will also be too close to the enemy. And the closer he is to the enemy, the farther his Rapid Slash will take him from the enemy. So here, Vergil's Doppelganger was too close to the enemy, and when he used Rapid Slash, he was, again, too far away from the enemy now, and when he attempted to use Void Slash, it didn't connect, it didn't hit the enemy because he was too far away. So that is one thing I guess you should keep in mind before even starting the combo.